Alex Mahajer. And it is Monday, October 26th, with 8 days left till Election Day. The Trump campaign is playing defense after a disastrous Sunday that included the White House's admission that they cannot control the worsening coronavirus pandemic. And then, of course, after a long wait, the 60 Minutes interview will talk about what was said, the lies that were told, and why Trump walked off. All of this and more on the AM. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the program. This morning, we've got a lot of headlines to cover. First, 60 million Americans have now voted in the 2020 U.S. presidential election, according to the U.S. Elections Project, breaking all known records for early voting, including the 2016 total. The U.S. registers its highest number of new COVID-19 cases, including 84,000 on Friday and nearly 80,000 on Saturday. The death toll has now reached 225,000. The Republican-controlled U.S. Senate will vote to confirm Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court today, with only 8 days left till the election. And at least 5 members of Vice President Mike Pence's inner circle have tested positive for COVID-19, including his chief of staff. Now, Mike Pence is now refusing to quarantine, flouting CDC guidelines about this quarantine that needs to happen for 14 days, and has continued to campaign events across the country. And after a really long election cycle, and with only 8 days left to go, the Trump campaign is entering the final week of the election campaign not happy and not pleased with where they're at. And this is due in part to a disastrous Sunday yesterday that included the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, admitting in a CNN interview with Jake Tapper that the White House and the Trump administration is not going to be able to control the coronavirus pandemic, which was essentially an admission of surrender. And this has sent ripples throughout Washington. And I want to play this video clip for you in full. This is Chief of Staff Mark Meadows on Jake Tapper discussing the White House's response to the coronavirus. CNN's Jake Tapper, with CNN's Jake Tapper yesterday discussing the coronavirus pandemic. Now, his comments have really sent shockwaves through Washington because medical experts think this concept of herd immunity, where you just let as many people get infected as you can and let the virus rage through the nation, is really going to cost us hundreds of thousands of lives, even by the end of the year. And that's as it stands with the way that things currently are. So this is really concerning, especially the fact that daily new infections have now hit records, and including the 7-day average has now hit a record in the United States. These infections are spiking, and that we have lots of evidence to suggest that they're spiking at Trump rallies, that these Trump rallies are super spreader events, just like the White House Rose Garden event for the announcement of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. So this is really concerning. And also, Donald Trump has said multiple times that we are rounding the corner beautifully in the battle against COVID. So he's sort of sending these mixed messages where he's telling the American people we're rounding the corner, that we're all going to be okay. And then we hear his chief of staff yesterday saying that that we aren't going to control the pandemic, at least not under a Trump administration, and that these super spreader events and campaign rallies are going to continue to happen and put thousands of Americans' lives at risk. So altogether, this has been a stunning revelation for most people to hear that there's just no response by the federal government to the coronavirus pandemic. We pointed out some of the numbers in the beginning of this broadcast. 225,000 American lives have now been taken. And so altogether, just a very stunning admission from Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. And it seemed like it was a little bit of a slip, like he didn't intend to let that out, but there it is, the White House admitting surrender to the coronavirus. We're on our own under the Trump administration. On top of that, yesterday was a 60 Minutes interview that everyone's been talking about all week, because news broke earlier in the week that Donald Trump walked off the set of his 60 Minutes interview with Lesley Stahl. So that interview finally aired last night, and I'm going to play the moment for you where Donald Trump actually walked off so you can get your take. And there it is, displeased with the questions, and Donald Trump walked off the set of the 60 Minutes interview. Immediately, the first thing that I noticed when watching this is that it's just so unpresidential of this guy to be afraid of tough questions. If he's afraid of Lesley Stahl, who's a very respected journalist and is very fair, and is asking very fairly the president tough questions about his failures, which the American people have a right to know, and he can't handle that kind of questioning, then is this man really fit to be in office? he really, and the childishness with which he is displeased with her for asking tough questions and sort of whining about Joe Biden not getting the same tough questions. Well, President Trump, it's time to defend your record. It's time to defend the things that you don't like. And his constant assault on the free media is also just so amusing to me, because he calls it the fake news, but then, sits down for interviews and has his White House chief of staff appear on CNN, the same network he says is fake news, but yet he continues to participate. He admits that his social media accounts are really the only way he's able to get his messaging out, because they flout the truth. And there were a lot of mistruths that were spoken during the 60 Minutes interview. There were about 16 false or misleading claims during that interview. First, he claimed that the coronavirus cases are rising because we're doing so much testing. Quote, if we didn't do testing, cases would be way down, he said. That is just blatantly false. His claims that we have turned the corner on the pandemic and that it's are also false. He doesn't encourage his rally attendees to wear masks, even though he was saying last night, quote, well, have you been looking? Yesterday, take a look. Take a look in Arizona. Everybody behind me had a mask. Well, everybody behind him is wearing a mask, but people in the crowds are not. And a large percentage of the people at his 2 Arizona rallies last week and at his most recent Wisconsin rally we're not wearing masks. And it's an exaggeration to say that everybody behind him is wearing masks. That means it's the crowd. So he also accused Democratic governors of Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Michigan of imposing a lockdown of their residents. That's simply not true. None of those 3 states have imposed lockdowns, including in Michigan, where Governor Gretchen Whitmer has imposed restrictions, but no lockdowns. He claimed that he created a record amount of 11.4 million jobs in the last 5 months, which is just simply not true. There were 11.4 million jobs added over 5 months, but there was a much bigger record job loss of 22.2 million jobs over the 2 months before it. So in other words, as of August of this year, the country is still down 10.7 million jobs since March. And as of September, the economy was down about 3.9 million jobs since the beginning of Trump's presidency. So all in all, when we ask the question, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? It's hard to find any evidence that that's true. So this has been the AM Report for HAPS News, the network of now. I'm Alex Mahajer. We are live every weekday morning at 7:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Eastern, with all of your quick political news and headlines to get your day started right. If you like this journalism, please consider sponsoring it. Visit me at haps.tv/@Alex and buy me a cup of coffee, because these shows are really early and I could really use one. Tomorrow, I'll be joined by Olga Lautman. She's going to talk about Russia and its attempts to influence the 2016 and the 2020 U.S. presidential election, as well as Donald Trump's ties to Russia. And we'll be back tomorrow. Thanks, everybody, for joining. And